Marco, first off, George Wardlaw, are we going to see him this weekend?
Yeah, well, he played really well last week in the Resies. We'll pick our side this afternoon, but he'll be right in the mix. He's had 2 games back now, and we're pleased that he's starting to look like he's got the match condition that allow him to be able to compete at the senior level. So we'll pick our side the Savo, but I'd be expecting that he'd be in it.
Is that what you need to see from him? Just the conditioning, or is there anything else you sort of need?
No, it's really just getting back in. He hadn't played for about a month. By the time he recovered from his injury, so I was just making sure that he had some good match fitness, and he's got that now. So unless we hear something from the medical staff that suggests otherwise, he'll be available to play.
Nick Larky looked like he was moving well. He's good to go.
Well, we're hoping so. He's, the PCL injury that he's got is just something that's been a little bit slower than what we would have liked, and but he's getting close to be able to play. It'll depend on how he pulls up after today's session. We've got another training run on Saturday, so we'll select him in the side and then see where it lands on Saturday.
How much does that affect what you do with Charlie Coleman? Because obviously it's such a shining light up forward, but you kind of need him down back.
Yeah, it was significant really, because that's what we did with Charlie last week. We played him forward because Nick's been out, and we just needed that tall target. And Charlie played a lot of his junior footy as a forward in the early part of his career here, and we moved him down back just to get some continuity with his footy. And even last week, we weren't going so well, so it was just like, let's put him back in the last part of the game. And he actually performed really well in the last quarter when he was down back. So we know he can play both ends of the ground, but it'll depend a little bit on whether Nick plays or not, and that'll determine where Charlie plays more than likely.
Okay, how do you handle the week and the mood after a loss like that with the playing group?
Yeah, well, if you came inside the walls of our footy club, you perhaps wouldn't notice so much that we'd had the sort of loss that we had in the performance we had last week. The mood and the spirit and the recognition of where we're at and what we've got to do to get to work to get ourselves back up the ladder. That's been terrific. The performance of our second side last week in a game here against the Cats was really, really strong, and the mood's good. And we know what we need to do and the things that we need to do, but it just takes time. And unfortunately for us, we had a pretty inexperienced side in last week, and we just made some mistakes with the footy that, particularly in the first half, when you're up and about and you're trying to play an attacking brand of footy, and we just had some terrible turnovers that Geelong really punished us with at the other. And so, a 4-goal-2 first quarter turns into a 11-goal-3 first half, and then the sort of spirit goes a little bit, or they go into their shells a little bit with taking risks with the ball, and that can be something that holds you back as well. So, but the spirit of the group is strong, and we know that we're well below our best. We played a pretty polished outfit last week, but some of the mistakes we made weren't necessarily because of Geelong's terrific play, and I don't want to take any credit away from them at all, but we just made simple mistakes with the footy, kicking errors, handball errors, marking errors that gave them the ball that we just couldn't defend the footy. So, against any side in the competition, they're going to hurt you, but particularly a side with the quality of Geelong and the experience that they've got.
Obviously, you're very realistic about where the team is at the moment, but heading into this season, is this where you sort of thought you would be? Well,
everyone hopes that they're going to win lots more games of footy. We had a really good patch of 6 or 7 weeks through the middle of the season where we're really, really competitive. We just had a few things that have just upset the apple cart. Larky being out, Sherry being out. At the minute, like last week's defence, for instance, 5 of our back 7 that roll through our back end and played a combined 60 games. We knew going in. We could have played Charlie Coleman back last week, but we want to give Will Dawson some exposure down back. He's 19 years of age, been at our club. It's his second year. We want to back some of these kids in, knowing full well that whether we win or lose, or whether they win or lose contests, it's just unbelievable experience for him to go up against these high quality forwards. 3 or 4 weeks ago when he played against Darcy, he did, as a real step forward in terms of, he can compete with Sam Darcy. That's a pretty good effort. Then he goes a game last week against Geelong, and it's now Cameron and Neil. And it's just like, oh wow, geez, 15 goals between them, didn't get that job done as well. So it's just all terrific learning, and whether he goes really, really well or not so well, some of those players just need that exposure. Now it's tough to sit through, and we don't want to sit through it for too long. By the 20-minute mark of the third quarter, it's just like, we've got to change this. Charlie's got to go down back and help us out here. But it's just some of the growing pains, unfortunately, and some of the more senior, experienced sides in the competition have already been through those growing pains. We're going through them now.
I know you don't want to put a timeline on it, but obviously supporters can get, frustrated and be a little bit over it. It has been a while since there's been success at the club. Realistically, how long are we expecting it to take?
Well, this is the thing with it. Whoever knows. Who was tipping that Adelaide would be second on the ladder this time of the year? I don't think anyone had them in the 8. Knew that they're progressing as a side, but then it just jumped up really quickly. If we go back to the side before that were in a sort of rebuild type of phase, it was the Brisbane Lions, and they had 2 years in a row where they only won 5 games, and then they jumped up and won 16 the next year. So who knows and when it's going to happen and how quickly it will happen, but we know that it can happen, and that's what we continue to have faith in. We rock into work every day knowing that there's patches of the play. Even last week in review of the game, it's just like we're looking at our patches of play and saying we moved that ball really, really well, but just missed a handball at the crucial stage that just went bang, straight back the other way, or we missed a crucial kick. But some of the patterns of how we played, we're actually really, really pleased with. But that won't sit comfortably with anyone who looks at the result and says, how could he possibly be saying that? They lost by 100 points. But there's still things in our game that we know that we have to do a lot of work on. But there's other parts of our game where us as coaches and our players know that we're making some progress.
There have been the commentators outside who've questioned you as a coach in terms of your desire, your nous, your passion, your faith to get it done.
Yeah.
What do you say to them?
Well, this is all part of the challenge. That's why we do what we do. We love the game, and part of the challenge is overcoming the adversity and getting the very best out of yourselves and the players. And it's a tough job though, with any list in the competition, and we just keep batting away at it.
Was this the toughest you found it?
No, I had some tough times when I was at Hawthorn. 2014, even though no one would look at it and say, oh, 2014 was a terrific year for Hawthorn, they won the premiership that year, but geez, we confronted some adversity. I was out for 6 weeks with a serious illness. Some of our more senior players were missing 10, 12, 14 weeks of footy, and it was a really, really tough year. Unbelievably rewarding that we ended up being able to, despite the adversity, win. But that's what we're searching for. We know this game's tough. Whether you're a side that's really, really good and challenging at the top end, it is still really, really tough. Whether it's to do with injuries, whether it's to do with form. Look at Brisbane last week. Lose a game by 10 goals to Gold Coast. It just came from nowhere. And Gold Coast were the other way. They kicked 0 goals in a half against Adelaide the week before, and then who could possibly expect they're going to bounce back and do what they did? That's the game. But having been in the game a long period of time, as tough as it is, and as seems like, well, gee, we're being overly patient, all of a sudden it will turn and the confidence of the group will rise. And when that's going to happen, I don't know, but sometimes it can happen really, really quickly. And if that means it's another pre-season, but then we've still got an enormous amount to gain out of the last 4 games of the season, and whether that's just as simple as young players getting more exposure to the level, and continuing to evolve the way that we want to play. We need to defend better though. We had a 6 or 8 week patch in the middle of the year where we're keeping sides to 70, 80 points against, and in the last 4 or 5 weeks in particular, we've started to leak too many goals again, including last week against the Cats, obviously with such a significant margin. So we need to try and fix up that part of our game.
But just back on what Katie was asking before, the passion, it still burns for you?
Yeah, I wouldn't have come back if I didn't want to do this job. And yeah, I love the challenge of it. It's a significant challenge, but I don't see it as any different to the challenge I had when I first arrived at Hawthorn. You know, no senior coach, no CEO, you know, political turmoil within the footy club, you know, less than 25,000 members, and in a very, very quick space of time that club was able to turn itself around, and I'm confident it can be done here as well. And enjoying the challenge of it. It's not easy. As I always say, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it.
West Coast indicated they're going to seek AFL assistance, be it a draft package or similar. I think Don Pike sort of likened them now to you guys a couple of years back. I'm just curious on your thoughts on that and then seeking assistance.
Well, I don't know enough about it. That's up to the AFL and West Coast, but yeah, Pikey and Minnie McQualter would be the best guys to ask about that.
Do you see similarities with them? And you obviously they've won a flag.
Well, the similarities are both sides have battled for a period of time to get themselves back up the ladder. So, but the AFL and the West Coast will work that out.
Do you send someone to Nazar Wangadeen, Millera?
We've been a pretty good player, isn't he? And what's been significant is at different stages sides have taken blokes to him. He's still been able to do the work. And last week at the death knock, they had 2 blokes on him, and he's still able to do it. So he's turned. He already was a very good player, but his last 6 or 8 weeks, as he stepped into the midfield, has been really, really good. And the fact that he can play, you know, he goes forward for that period of time in the last quarter last week and wins them the game. So he's a special player. But yeah, we'll work out what we do this afternoon. But I dare say at some point in time, someone will be on him at some point, well, not at some point in time, but hopefully a lot of the game. Whether it's just a real hard lockdown tag, we'll have to work out over the next 24 hours.
Has the club got a real interest in Jake Lever?
Well, that's all this management stuff, and the really, really tough thing for players, coaches and clubs right now is just how much speculation is around all players around the competition. And yeah, last year someone asked me a question, ironically enough, about Todd's son Jack Viney, and ironically enough Luke Parker ended up coming to the footy club, and I was just as open as honest as Fly was earlier this week in talking to Jack Silvani, and I got absolutely smashed last week for mentioning that we'd even spoken to a player. So we're better off just shutting up really, because all clubs are speaking to a whole number of players that are either in contract or out of contract. Our strategy has mainly been just bite your tongue and say nothing.
Isn't that changing though? With what Fly's doing and being so open about it?
Well, maybe for the pies it can work. For me last year it didn't work. So I reckon I'll just go back to my old strategy of just saying nothing.
Do you think the attitudes are changing at all in terms of, you know, people are aware that players are talking to clubs are looking at players, that players do realistically move on? Yeah,
well, it's just really awkward. You know, you look at the situation with Oscar Allen earlier in the year, just creates unnecessary pressures when it becomes so public. When they haven't even made a decision really, they're just trying to explore what's in their best interests. They're free agents, they should be entitled to do that, but as soon as it becomes a public forum for that, it just makes it enormously difficult for the clubs, enormously difficult for the player himself. And if you can possibly do it, just keep it behind closed doors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.